Holy God, may your word be spoken, may your word be heard. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated here in the sanctuary. Please settle in at home. In exploring the question of who we are as the church, we have parables from Jesus to allow us some insight, some shift in perspective to what it is, what it means to be a church person. And we talked about on All Saints Sunday being saints with a little s in the Anglican sense. We're this community of people committed to the values and ideals of the gospel. Not perfect people, but people forming a community to pursue the good in the name of Christ. And we talked last week reflecting on that parable of the wise and the foolish maidservants, bridesmaids, that we're called to be wise in our humanity and to treasure those high values of God's mercy, justice, compassion. And when we carry out those values throughout our life, we have light in the darkness. And we started to explore that question of, well, if we're the saints, who are these other people? Who are these other people? And I said last week, and I say it again, we have to walk on this ground very carefully. Because ideally, the saints would be everyone. Every person is a child of God. Every person is precious in God's sight. But something's gone awry in the world. We're not all committed to being saints with a little s. What do we do with that? What do we do with that? Enter our parable of the talents today. So this story, I'm guessing, makes one a little uncomfortable when one hears it. It might be helpful to know it makes one uncomfortable when one reads it as a priest sharing it with their congregation. And it's hard to hear because it evokes fear. Am I right? That's what it does for me. Is that what it does for you? It evokes some sense of fear that I'm the one who's buried my talent. And it has that effect in part because what is a talent? I use the word talent. Actually, it was valuable coins, which is helpful. I've buried my valuable coin. I don't even know what my valuable coin is, right? So it's fear. We get this fear. I suspect Jesus, being Jesus, kind of planted that seed for us, even here 2,000 years later, to make us uncomfortable, which is to get us to think. And when we start to think, we can get wise. Always come back to wisdom, friends. Always seek and come back to wisdom. She will care for us and give us comfort and hope. So let's try and get back to wisdom, thinking about this parable of the valuable coins. We noted last week, and I say it because it's important when you're dealing with parables, that the parable of the bridesmaids was not about what you should do if you have 2 flashlights and someone else has none and you're both in the dark. It is not practical advice about what to do with the source of light. Very important. Likewise, this parable is not practical advice about what to do with money. It's just not. Money is standing as a symbol to get us to think about inner things, inner realities, inner truths about our relationship with God, especially, but with God and one another. It's meant to get us to reflect on the precious things that have been entrusted to us from God and what we're doing with them. Does that start to shift the ground a little bit? Is that an important shift? You should know that foolish people, a century or so ago, read this gospel as literal advice for how you can become wealthy in America. And people are still preaching that today. Have you heard of the prosperity gospel? If you're at all kind of church savvy, you have. People who preach that God just wants to shower blessings upon you, and all you got to do is pray and go out and do it. It's still preached today. It started in the 20s. I wish I could remember names, but my church history, American religious history, has gotten fuzzy from when I learned about it all the way back when I was, young, which was a long time ago. But it started in the 20s, and I just remember this particular image from one of the pamphlets about it. They're diamonds in your backyard. All you have to do is go out and dig it up, and God will bless you with wealth. It's right there for you. Not surprisingly, this is preached from people who have wealth already. And everyone kind of in America wants some measure of success. So it was a popular form of preaching. People were enthusiastic to hear it then, just as they are now. But in the 20s, how did they end?
Not so good.
Not so good. What happened? The crash and the Great Depression. And this preaching about gospel became seen as absurd. It was absurd. It's absurd. It's absurd because it's a parable. It's a parable. And if you want stuff about money, the Bible's full of it. And it's about generosity, kindness, caring for those who have less than you. That's what it's about. It's not about grabbing all the stuff for yourself. It's explicit. This is about something else. This is about the valuable coins as a symbol, an expression of the precious things God has entrusted to us. A word for that in church circles is our souls. Our souls. That gets us in all kinds of trouble, but I think it's also kind of our consciousness, that spark of life that we have that's uniquely ours, and what we do with it. There's a connection between consciousness and soul. I don't want to go down that long, winding road. But I want to get you to think about the precious thing is you. The precious thing is you. Who you are in all of your fullness and in all of the integrity that you can muster for all the parts of yourself. To see them as good and precious in God's eyes and as a gift to you to bring out into the world to share for blessing with others. As this parable is sitting now. Yeah, I think that's an important shift. For me as an Episcopalian, I'm not an Episcopalian just because I'm generally progressive. Shocking, maybe. I don't know. I don't know whether that's shocking to you or not. Out of my own progressivism, anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's not go there. To me, there's something spiritually integral about the progressivism of the Episcopal Church and about our opening up the circles of full membership and full authority in the church to women, to LGBTQ folk, to African Americans, to Native Americans, to communities around the world that have spiritual resources for us to learn from and to celebrate with and to be enriched by. It's not just to be nice. It's a wise pursuit of truth and integrity. It's a wise pursuit of truth and integrity. So this story, this parable, let's focus in now on the third servant who buried his valuable coin. I don't know if this occurred for you, but it occurred for me. This experience of this poor servant reminds me of the struggle of our gay and lesbian folk to come out. It reminds me of the struggle of something precious in you that so much of society tells you is not okay and expects you to bury. And you shouldn't bury it. You should bring it out and celebrate it. That was in my mind recently because, like many of you, I was watching election coverage on MSNBC, right? There's that progressivism coming out, and we could talk about that. We're not going to today. And if you were watching election coverage on MSNBC, what's the phrase I want? Who was a breakout star? Steve Kornacki. What did he do?
Counts.
He did the counts. He was at the big board. I'm sorry?
He loves spreadsheets like we all do.
As if you are a numbers guy, Steve Kornacki's a superhero for you. And he would be at the big board, the sophisticated map, which you could touch screens and see counts and take it all in. And he went 48 hours at the heart of when things were starting to crystallize Thursday and Wednesday. He went without sleep to just be there for the network and for his co-anchors and for us who were watching. So Steve Kornacki, this is totally, I found this out on Twitter through a Twitter link that someone shared. 2011 would be 9 years ago. Steve Kornacki shared his coming out story in Salon, website magazine. And he talked about how he struggled. He struggled to be open to his family and friends in his homosexuality. And he found himself in a relationship with a really wonderful man. But he just couldn't come out to the wider circles about the feelings that he was having and the relationship that they shared. And his partner, almost partner, started to want more. And Steve wasn't able to go there because he needed to keep himself buried. And he lost him. He lost this wonderful man. He lost him out of his life. And it was a wake-up call to him. I've got to bring this out. I can't keep this buried. That's this parable. That's, I think, the very heart of what this parable is about. And I'm proud that we as Episcopalians can name that. Because a lot of our brothers and sisters in the church can't. They can't see this. They are blind to it. But I think it's truth, spiritual truth. If you'd like to read Steve's story, it's very first person and has all kinds of things in it. We have a link to the article online. We'll put it in the chat. You can check it out. We'll put it in the email on Wednesday. And, save it for later. Don't dual screen like I did last week during convention and all the celebrations about the election results, right? Your attention should be here. Your attention should be... I'm kidding. I'm not. So, as the church, as this connected community pursuing gospel values, we have the care of one another in all our fullness. And we should be encouraging to one another to bring ourselves out, to be our full selves, as full as we can be, as full of life and spirit as we can be, and to join in the celebration that God has in mind for us. There it was again, I noted. Last week, right, we noted that this vision of the 10 bridesmaids parable was to a celebration, to the wedding celebration. It was there again, right? The master says to the servants who had the 5 coins and the 2 coins, come celebrate with me. What a lovely keep that front and center. God is calling us to a celebration if we're willing to go. And not everyone is. Not everyone is. Some folks have spiritual values and their precious selves entrusted to them, and they're turning aside from it. They're burying it. They're not able to face up to it. And that has consequences for them. It's not that we hate them. It's not that we are actively judging them. It's that they're making horrific choices. And in some cases, we're all paying the price. But in some cases, they are. So this is something else that came up on Twitter. And part of, I think, do I need to tell you about Twitter? Should I tell you a little bit about Twitter? Because not everyone kind of gets what Twitter's about. And maybe Twitter doesn't know what it's about. But if you use it in a certain way, it's a way to connect with a diverse community of people to share their experiences, to hear things going on in their lives that can enrich your own. That's what it can do, I think, at its best. And I think that's what it was intended by Jack Dorsey and the founders of Twitter. That's what they were hoping for. Lots to say about it. I'm sorry? Things happened that they did not anticipate. Yeah. And I think they've taken some responsibility for that this past election season, which, anyway, let's not go down the road. So here's a story that I think relates to the dark side of this parable, the fearful side that we experienced hearing about the valuable coin that gets buried. And this is rough stuff, okay? But I think I'm going to bring it out because I think it helps us get grounded in what's real in this moment. This is a nurse in South Dakota who shared a story last night. I just happened to get a link to it and to read it, and it immediately connected with thoughts coming together around this parable and our thoughts about being community, the community of the church. Her name's Jody. I have a night off from the hospital. As I'm on my couch with my dog, I can't help but think of the COVID patients the last few days. The ones that stick out are those who still don't believe the virus is real. The ones who scream at you for a magic medicine and that Joe Biden is going to ruin the USA, all while gasping for breath on 100% Vapotherm. They tell you there must be another reason they are sick. They call you names and ask why you have to wear all that stuff, because they don't have COVID, because it's not real. Yes, this really happens. And I can't stop thinking about it. These people really think this isn't going to happen to them. And then they stop yelling at you when they get intubated. It's like a horror movie that never ends. There are no credits that roll. You just go back and do it all over again. Which is what I will be doing for the next 3 nights. But tonight it's me and Cliff and Oreo ice cream. And how ironic that I have my home hoodie. The South Dakota I love seems far away right now. God bless Jody and all the nurses and doctors and custodial staff working in places that have had the core, ground, and reality of their work undermined by leaders in government and media, so that this is the nightmare reality that they are living. This is the value of truth being buried, and the horrific consequences unfolding because of it. This is this parable too, I dare to say. And this is the depth and reality of the stuff we are talking about as church. We are engaged with the most real and consequential things in life. It is not make-believe, it is not pretend, it is not pie in the sky, it is not wishful thinking. It is real and it is hard. And God help those who aren't getting it, because they need help. I don't know how to break that hold of darkness. I don't know how to get that truth unburied. But I find myself thinking about it, as Jody is thinking about her lived experience of this kind of spiritual truth expressed in this gospel parable. I think for us as a country, and this relates to Jody's experience and what I surmise is the worldview of those who are just giving her so much denial, aggressive denial, as she's caring for them. Our country has buried the truth of our injustices. We've buried our history, most especially of slavery and racial injustice. And we live in a time when it is getting unburied yet again. And some people aren't ready for that. They're not open to that. And here's the hard truth. Here's the hard truth. It is incredibly painful, the history that we bear as a nation. It is painful to hear it. For those suffering the consequences of this history, our pain is nothing. Their pain is inexpressible. And the merciful, loving thing to do is to open ourselves to this hard truth to start to alleviate their pain. And it's not in this parable, but Jesus says something about those who mourn, those who seek justice, those who seek righteousness. What does he say about them?
Blessed.
They're blessed. This hard work that people fear and deny and don't want to take part in, it's the path to blessing. The hard path is the path to blessing, not the easy path. That's gospel truth. That's truth for the moment that we are living in. And its consequences could not be more profound. So friends, let us hold our own precious coin, the soul that we are, the consciousness that we have, all the different parts of ourselves. Let us hold ourselves gently, lovingly, caringly. And in doing that, let's hold one another gently, lovingly, caringly, most especially those of us who are in pain, Those of us who need encouragement to come out and be who they are. Those of us who need to know that there are those who care about justice more than they care about their own comfort. Those who are willing to take a risk and make a difference and seek the community of God that God desires for all of us. And remember, it ends in celebration. Believe it and strive for it. Amen.